There are three words that are completely changing how courts across America look at religious expression, and we're going to talk about those three words today. I'm Stuart Shepard, host of First Liberty Live, and we're standing here at the U.S. Supreme Court, obviously, and I've got with me Jeff Mateer, who's our Chief Legal Officer at First Liberty. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Stuart.
We're going to talk about those three words, but I want to set it up by talking about what happened at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just recently. That's good news and fits into what we're about to talk about. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, just a few days ago, the Fifth Circuit issued what's called an administrative stay. And of course, everybody's going, what's an administrative stay? Well, it goes back to what had happened. If you recall, earlier this year, the Louisiana legislature passed a law requiring public schools to post the 10 Commandments in their classrooms. And that was supported and signed by Governor Jeff Landry, and then defended by Attorney General Elizabeth Murrell. And the ACLU, some of our liberal opponents, went into court on behalf of a couple school districts, arguing that that law violates the separation of church and state. And they convinced a lower court judge to issue an injunction stopping Louisiana schools from publishing those 10 Commandments on their walls. And so what happened is General Murrell appealed that decision immediately to the Fifth Circuit. Right. And she sought a stay, an administrative stay, saying, hey, this judge shouldn't enjoin the whole law. And the Fifth Circuit agreed with that. They overturned the whole injunction and said, look, the decision only applies to the school districts who sued.
And then sometime in the future, it's going to be heard at the Fifth. And
the whole case at some date in the future will be heard. And, we're very confident that Louisiana is on the right side of this because of our victory in the Kennedy case, in Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, that overturned the horrible bad precedent that and I'm sure all of our listeners know, Lemon versus Kurtzman, right. The dreaded Lemon test from over 50 years ago, which misinterpreted the Establishment Clause. That is no longer good law. And the case that the other side's relying on is known as Stone versus Graham. Well, Stone versus Graham relies upon that now overturned Lemon decision. Yes, okay. And so as a result, that's not good law. And so Louisiana can do exactly what they did, which is put those 10 Commandments back.
Now let's talk about the building behind us just for a moment, because if this should end up at the U.S. Supreme Court, there are some interesting architectural cues about this building. Share with me some of those.
Well, it's interesting because what did the court in Kennedy say? If we're not going to follow Lemon, then what is the standard we're going to follow?
And those are the three words we teased at the beginning. What are those three words?
And the three words are history and tradition. And we're going to look at in interpreting the First Amendment, interpreting the Establishment Clause, we're going to look at its history and its tradition. In the past,
in the United States.
Yeah. In the past, do we have a history and tradition of, say, putting the 10 Commandments up in public spaces?
Such as
in this building right behind us. And we were just in the courtroom just a few minutes ago. And what did we see front and center? We saw the 10 Commandments.
Tell me where they're located.
Well, they're above the Chief Justice. And that's not the only place that they're throughout the building, and their religious imagery throughout this building. And so
when you go through the doors into the courtroom, there are two tablets with the Roman numerals 1 through 10 on them, which would suggest the 10 Commandments.
Look, it doesn't suggest. It is the 10 Commandments.
When you look at the other face,
it's a stone tablet with 1 through 10. That's the 10 Commandments.
Which looks just like the one in the movie, I might add. The other face of the court, the one you don't see on TV news on the east side of the court, also has Moses right up front and center at the very top, where the little statues are up at the top on this side. Moses is right up there prominently displayed.
Moses is right there as other lawgivers. I mean, Moses, the lawgiver. And what law is he giving? The 10 Commandments.
And this building was occupied in the 1930s. There we go with history and tradition. That's nearly 100 years ago.
Yes, well, since the 1930s. And actually in defense of Louisiana, the history and tradition of actually, let alone in public buildings, but in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, in the McGuffey Reader. I mean, there's a strong history and tradition of public schools using 10 Commandments prior to the Supreme Court ruling incorrectly that they weren't allowed.
And we were talking through a bit of history last night with our friend Tim Barton from over at Wall Builders, and he talked about a case that Daniel Webster argued that made the case that all education, if it's public, should be based on the Bible. This was a long time ago, but that's how they thought historically about the Bible in education.
Look, you can't go in a building in Washington, D.C., whether it's the Supreme Court or the Capitol or the White House, and not see religious imagery.
Yeah.
It's infused with it. And the thing is, that wasn't surprising to them because that's where our founding came from. And the building behind us that was opened in 1935. So that's in relative recent history.
Yeah.
Again, in 1935, when they were building this and making decisions, part of the decision was because of the foundational basis of religion, we're going to display that in our public buildings.
And they were being activists. It was just the culture that they were expressing the thoughts of.
No, it's absolutely the culture. And again, you go through the Capitol and statue after statue, what do you see? You see our religious forefathers.
Now, all of us, for our lifetimes, practically, at least for the last 50 years of our lifetimes, have operated under what you called the lemon test, what everybody called the lemon test in the legal profession. And we've gotten used to thinking of everything in that light. So when we see a nativity scene on public property, or a cross on public property, or we see a menorah on a street corner on public property, we think, oh, well, that's changed now, and we all need to change how we think about those things when we see public expressions of faith.
Yeah, the victory in Coach Kennedy's case changes everything. Kennedy changes everything because the Lemon precedent, which simplified basically says when the government does something and it's religious, if it's an endorsement, then it's prohibited. The government, if it doesn't have a non-religious reason for doing something religious, I mean, the test made no sense then, makes no sense today. Yeah. And Kennedy says, no, that's not, because if that were true, then think of all the things we'd have to remove from our society. And so rather than removing, what's that open up the possibilities for? Well, we can put 10 Commandments back into public schools.
And we should.
And we should. We can put 10 Commandments in front of courthouses and in public parks. And we should. We can have nativities during Christmas.
On the county courthouse
on the
property.
county horse. We can put menorahs and other religious holiday expressions back. Nothing wrong with any of that.
All right. Jeff, what do we need to do as individuals to bring that about?
Well, what we need to do is, one, it's like anything. You can have freedom, but if you don't exercise it, then what's the point? Someone told me earlier today, it's sort of like you've had a bird in a cage, and now the cage door is open, but the bird still stays in the cage.
Yeah.
And so my advice is, bird, fly. Let's fly out of that cage and let's exercise the First Amendment rights that we have.
Outstanding. Jeff Mateer, thank you so much. Good chatting with you.
Thanks, Stuart.
All right. And thank you for being part of this. If you'd like to support the work we do at First Liberty, if this resonates with you, look for the big red donate button up at the top of the page at firstlibertylive.com.